Judges 13:1. Now the sons of Israel again, say again.
Again.
Did evil, say evil.
Evil.
In the sight of Yehovah, say Yehovah.
Yehovah.
So that Yehovah gave them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. If you don't get that verse, it just seems to me like starting out in 13:2, you've really missed something important. It's just like just one day he decided to do it. We're going to get to what this is, but this sets the context. And what I like about this context is it says again that this is a cycle that was taking place. And again, it shows that Yehovah actually does something, which I have to say is a bit controversial. The controversy for me is that when I read that, it says he gave them into the hands of the enemies. I mean, so it's not like, the enemies all of a sudden grew up to have some great power or
We've
strength.
overpowered the God of Israel.
No, that is not the case. It says he gave them into the hands of the Philistines, and then it gives the amount of time, which it says for 40 years, which I think is pretty interesting within itself. We see that.
I gotta say, I can't read these stories in Judges, and this is true of all of Judges, but especially here where I hear about God giving over Israel to suffer at the hands of the Palestinians, and not tie it to modern times. Just can't.
What do you mean the hands of the Palestinians? It's the Philistines,
right? But Philistines is plishtim in Hebrew, and the word Palestinian comes from, it's the same word, from the same derivation.
Isn't that interesting? You have to say that. You have to explain that. So you can't. So you're saying you can't read about that in the past and not deal with that now? I
just can't. Meaning, and there's a bigger concept here, which is that when Israel sins, God gives us over to suffer at the hands of a foreign nation. This is something we see repeat. It's actually stated more clearly in the first few chapters of Judges, but we see examples of it throughout the Tanakh. We see it with the Babylonians. We see it with the Assyrians. And here we're seeing it with the Philistines. Now, the Palestinians today are actually Arabs. And why are they called Palestinians? Because the Romans wanted to strip the land of Israel of its Jewish identity after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135. And so they renamed the province of Judea. They renamed it Palestina. And Palestina was they remembered that there had been these Philistines in this land. And so the Roman pronunciation of Philistia, of the land of Peleshet in Hebrew, was Palestina. And later, Arabs invaded in the year 638 AD. And settled here, and there were actually waves of invasions, and there was invasions of Turks and various other peoples and Crusaders, and today the Palestinians are descendants of different waves of people who came, but they're called Palestinians because of the Roman name for Judea.
Now, let me ask you a question. In Arabic, isn't there an issue with even the issue of being able to say Philistine?
Right. So there's no p in Arabic. So when a Palestinian tries to say in English Palestinian, unless he's very good at English, he'll say Palestinian and Palestine. Now, I should say that Palestinians, up until 1964, referred to Jews who lived in the British Mandate of Palestine. 1917, the British conquer Philistine. It was called under the Turks. They conquer it, and they call it Palestine in English. And there were Palestinians who were actually Jews. Arabs were never called Palestinians until around 1964, when they plotted to wipe out the Jews. They said, look, Arabs have 22 countries. We can't call ourselves Arabs. We've got to be able to make an exclusive claim to that land where the Jews live. So they called themselves Palestinians.
I got to tell you something so interesting about this, and I really wish I was more up to date in what the situation was. Last year at our tour, BFA does a tour to Israel. It's our third year that we're doing it, about to do it in the next couple weeks. But there was a couple on our tour, and we went to Bethlehem, and this is actually their hometown of Bethlehem. They actually are living in the United States, have what I can say. Can I use this word? Can I use the word citizenship?
I don't know. They are.
But what's so interesting is they showed me there actually was a passport that said Palestine from whenever it was, and I was like, I really was going through this issue. It's like, so when did this happen? That they're from this particular area, and in the passport it said Palestine. And I don't know if you know about that, like when it shifted or when it switched or what the exact year was where it shifted. But when she was born, and she's not Arab. She actually happens to be a Christian from Bethlehem. But that was what was on the actual on her actual passport, the document.
So basically, up until Israel declared independence in 1948, between 1917 and 1948, the land of Israel was called Palestine, and it was a British occupied territory. Before that, it was called Philistine under the Turks. But the people here were never called Palestinians; they were Arabs. And this identity of the Palestinians as a separate people is really something that only came about in the '60s. And really, it's an identity that's still evolving. Meaning, that there will be Israeli Arabs who are citizens of the state of Israel, and you'll ask them, are they Palestinians? Some will say yes, some will say no. Meaning, there's this evolving identity of this new people, which isn't so unusual. Think about it. There was a country called Czechoslovakia, and for 50 years or however long it was, 100 years, there were people who said, I'm Czechoslovakia, and today no such country exists. Now there's the Czechs and there's the Slovaks. So anyway, yeah. But Israel is not some recent people from 100 years ago. We were a people that goes back 3,500 years. We were, formed in the crucible of Egypt and fashioned in the desert and then brought into the land. The word is clean and unclean. But again, there's two different types of things here. Leviticus 11:46-47 says, these are the instructions concerning animals, birds, all living creatures that move in water, and all creatures that swarm on earth, for distinguishing between the unclean and the clean, between the living things that may be eaten and the living things that may not be eaten. So there we have things that if you touch them, you'll become unclean, especially when they're dead specifically. And then you have things that you may eat and not eat. And those are two different kinds of things. And so here it's telling her not to eat something unclean. And presumably from the context of the Nazarite, it's so that she doesn't become unclean and thereby make the child unclean. Now, you're right. It's possible that he's saying don't eat pork. But that's a strange thing for the angel to say.
Well, I didn't say for sure. I'm just saying when she says nor eating any unclean thing, the question becomes, is this something further? Is it beyond that? And I think that's what you're
I think so. In other words, that's my take on it. Yep. And if you want to disagree, that's fine. But my take on it is that because he's this Nazarite and wants to maintain a state of ritual cleanness, that she's getting this sort of commandment that a regular person wouldn't be required to do. Just like the Nazarite wouldn't drink wine, the Nazarite wouldn't eat something that's ritually unclean. Yep. Even though you and I can eat that, we just can't eat an unclean species. Does that make any sense?
So can you give an example of something that would be ritually unclean?
Yeah. So, let me read you this. Numbers 6, verse 7. It says, even if his father or mother or his brother or his sister should die, he must not defile himself for them, since, this is the JPS, since hair set apart for his God is upon his head. Throughout his term as a Nazarite, he is consecrated to Yehovah. And the word is kadosh, holy. So what does that mean? That means a Nazarite is not allowed to go to a cemetery, because if you touch a grave, you become ritually unclean. He can't touch a grave. Even for his father or mother or his wife, he's not allowed to become ritually unclean, because he's holy to Yehovah. And that's you're allowed to touch a grave. You're allowed to become ritually unclean. The only time that would be an issue is if you were going to the temple. Right. Then you would go through the process of the purification. Yep. But the Nazarite has to maintain a state of ritual purity, whereas you and I don't. And here, so what's an example? Let's say, for example, I don't know, we've got a hamburger, and the hamburger is, I don't want to be, how do I put this? Well, I'll just say it. So a woman who is menstruating, she makes the hamburger, and you and I could eat that. That's no problem whatsoever. But the Nazarite wouldn't be allowed to eat that. Okay. Because she makes that ritually unclean by touching it. That's a whole discussion in Leviticus 15. And therefore he can't, the Nazarite wouldn't be allowed to eat that.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And that's actually really important, because some people read Leviticus 15, they don't understand this whole context. They don't read the last couple verses of Leviticus 15, and they think, oh, the menstruating woman can't make any of my food. No, that's only if you're a Nazarite or you're going to the temple. That's,
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, and I think this is interesting. She says this in verse 6. She says, Ish ha-Elohim, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. So she gives first the fact that he's a man of God. Then she goes on to give the explanation of him, saying, but I will just tell you something. He looked like what? A melech, an angel, a malach. Yeah. Very awesome, she says. And I did not ask him where he came from or where he's from, nor did he tell me his name.
And for very awesome, the Hebrew is very terrifying.
Very terrifying. Wow. Can you imagine having that happen? I mean,
why does she say he's a man of God? Why doesn't she just say he's an angel of God?
She doesn't know.
If it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck, it's a duck.
Maybe
right?
she's never seen before, or heard, or never had this happen and wasn't 100% sure. In
How
fact,
how does she know it looks like an angel of God?
Okay, but here's what's funny. The story is going to give us another hint about this, which I think is interesting. I want to get to it if we can.
Right. But go on.
But he said to me, "Behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and now you shall not drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb." And then she adds something really interesting.
Yeah.
To the day of his death. Now the angel actually didn't say it. Maybe the angel did say it, and it's not in the text.
What's recorded is the angel says from the womb. Doesn't she? She seems to add, as far as we can tell, until the day of his death. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Maybe the angel said it. It's just not recorded. But from what we know, she added. That reminds me of the story of Adam and Eve, where they were told not to eat of it, and when she's speaking to or he was told not to eat of it, but the way she got the message was they weren't supposed to eat of it or even touch it.
Okay. Now, you have something you want to say about this before I move on?
Yeah.
Go ahead. You don't have to say something, Nehemia. I mean, if you well,
really
go ahead.
No, so number 6, we definitely have this idea of this lifelong Nazarite, which is unique. This is the only place in the entire Tanakh. Now, in the Septuagint, for example, Samuel, we're told, is in the lifelong Nazarite. But that's not in the Tanakh.
Yeah, in the Septuagint.
So, did I say the Septuagint?
Yeah.
What did I say? Yeah. So, in the Septuagint, so that would mean possibly 2, but
some people don't know the Septuagint. Can you tell them what that is?
That's the ancient Greek translation of the Tanakh. But yeah, that's what I got. Let's go on.
Okay. Now, here's where things get interesting to me. So she goes to her husband. Let me set this up. She has this amazing thing happen. She gets this word. This is what's going to happen. She believes it, I guess. She tells him what the deal. And then Manoah does this. Now, I have to be honest. And husbands and wives that are listening, I asked the question. I would ask the question, if it was me, what would I have said? Andrea comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to let you know. A man of God came. He looked to me like an angel, and he says that we're going to have a son, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." Well, can I give the good news of this story?
Sure.
What's the good news? Then the woman gave birth to a son, and we never hear anything about the son, what his name is going to be, until he's actually born. The woman gave birth to a son, and she named. I think it says this. Named him Samson, and the child grew up, and Yehovah blessed him. And the spirit of Yehovah began. Oh, well, actually, do we go to 25?
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe so.
And the spirit of Yehovah began to stir him. Wow. Wow. Began to stir him in Mahane Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol.
In the camp of Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I want to ask this question, Nehemia. When you see this, it says, that let her hear all these things. And the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. Is there anything that makes you ask the question why his name is Samson and what the name means?
Well, I know what the name means. It comes from the word Shemesh, which means sun, and he lives in the area of Beit Shemesh, house of the sun. People worship the sun, and it makes me suspicious of her. They have this experience of an angel of Yehovah.
This is a pearl. Work with this,
but they live in an area where. Going back to the time of the Canaanites, people worshiped the sun, and the Israelites learned the ways of the Canaanites. And I've got to wonder, after all is said and done, did she name him after the sun? And meaning the sun in the sky. And I can imagine a scenario happening where they see this figure, and it impresses them. It goes up in a wisp of smoke up into the sky, maybe up to the sun, and so they name their son Samson. Man of the sun. It's a strange name to give the guy. And look, he is this complex figure, Samson.
He really is.
You know, on the one hand, he has the spirit of Yehovah, and he's described as a savior of Israel. He's coming to save Israel. On the other hand, he's having these relationships with these Philistine women. And, I mean, this is not... You know, we can't look at Samson and say, here is our blameless, Messiah, or even someone who follows Torah all that much. On the other hand, he's a Nazarite. He's not drinking wine. He's not cutting his hair. Like, he's a complex figure.
Yeah. I will say this, that I do think it's interesting, is it says, and the child grew up. You know, it's really funny. I want to do something that's really a little bit controversial. And I have the option to do this more times than you can imagine, because I'm a creative person. I really am. I'm a creative person. And I could look at something, and if I had an agenda, I could say this. I'm going to tell you why her name was never mentioned. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to give you a good reason. And actually, this would be hard for you to argue that it's not true because I can't show you, and you couldn't show me. You couldn't, right. I'm going to tell you the reason that she was, why her name was never mentioned is because of the name she gave her son. She gave her son, the name for the son, and because of that, she was disqualified of having her name put into the scripture.